What's happening, Cardinal Nation? Welcome back to the CardinOLL podcast, a classroom podcast that has been designed to interview expert leaders and gain their insight, which will help take your organizational leadership and learning skills to the next level immediately. Let me start off with a quote today. Define success on your teams, achieve it by your own rules, and build a life you're proud of. That quote was made by Anne Sweeney, former president of the Disney ABC television group. Trust me, you don't want to miss any of our guests this month, as we will be interviewing some of the top women leaders in the community and university who have and are redefining success. These women are doing a phenomenal work. So be sure to listen to the CardinOLL podcast, Women's History Edition, this month on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, or Google Podcasts. And you know what? You can always view us on YouTube every single Friday. I am Dr. C. Sean Owens, aka The Professor Owens, as you can see by my moniker below. With my co-host, I'm going to bring him in right now, the incomparable Dr. Andrew McCart. Dr. McCart, how you doing today?
Doing great, Dr. Owens. You know, this is it's that time of year when the sun's out a little more, and I don't want to date us or freeze us, but everybody knows this March because Women's History Month. But this is we're officially on spring break, and I can't think of a better way to celebrate it than the conversation that we're going to have with our guest today.
No doubt, right? So we will continue this month with the great success we had last month with our initiative. Our initiative is called Faculty First Fridays, where we will interview some faculty member, and they will give you some great insight into how they're doing their work and what they're doing to kind of make the world a better place. But before we jump into today's podcast with our special guest, I want to let our listeners and viewers know that if you are ready to learn to lead with compassion and expertise, you can save time and money by enrolling in U of L's Bachelor's in Organizational Leadership and Learning. The degree offers a unique prior learning assessment course, which awards you tuition-free college credit for your work experience. It gives you the ability to save up to $23,000. Learn more about this value and other amazing benefits in the BSSOLL degree from uofl.me/BSOLL-podcast. Again, you can learn more and get more information about the degree and the benefits of the degree from uofl.me/BSOLL-podcast. So let me introduce today's guest. So today's guest, she is from the great state of Kentucky. She is a UK grad. So Cardinal Nation, be generous and be forgiving. We are all allowed to make one mistake in life. She's been entrenched into the dynamic world of special education from my research since 1996. And if my math is correct, that's approximately 25 years, which is amazing because she's only 30 years old. In addition, she's been a part of obtaining over $14 million in grant money, and she is leading the College of Education and Human Development at the University of Louisville. So, ladies and gentlemen, go get your pens, get your pencils, get your notepads, your memo boards, your iPads, whatever it is that you take notes on, as we welcome into the classroom the one, the only, the invenerable Dr. Amy Lingo. Dean Lingo, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. That is like the best introduction that I have ever had in all of my 30 years, Dr. Owens. I just have to tell you, I love that.
I'm telling you. Listen, we always want our guests to feel like $1 million here on the CardinOLL podcast.
You accomplished that today.
That's what we want. That's what we want. Me and Dr. McCart work really hard. He does a lot of research to make me look really, really good. So here on the CardinOLL podcast, we don't like wasting a lot of time. We like jumping in and getting into our guest and digging to get the best information out of them so that our viewers can get some gold nuggets. So let me start off with another quote. Sheryl Sandberg said that leadership is about making others better as a result of your presence and making sure that impact lasts in your absence. So Dean Lingo, tell us, how do you define leadership?
I think I do in a very similar way that how you just articulated with that quote. I mean, my goal when I became the interim dean here in the college about 2 years ago was to think about how I could create a an environment and how I could create a college that would be better than I found it. Right. I think that's that's what our responsibility is to use whatever influence or impact that we have to make the world, the community, a better place. So I do think it is about setting a vision. It's about getting people to buy into that vision through building relationships and really moving the work forward. And I think that if people can see that you're trying to do the right thing and make an impact within the community and within the college and the work that you're trying to do, I think it's helpful. And I think people will follow.
I think that's a great way to define leadership. Again, like I say, I think I've said it for probably, I don't know, Dr. McCart, 9-10 weeks straight. Every person we ask this question to, they always add one unique component. And I think Dean Lingo put it out there best. And I'm sorry, I'm so used to saying Dean Lingo instead of Dr. Lingo. Or...
And please call me Amy. This is that will make me feel a lot more, it'll be a lot more comfortable and conversational if you can do that, Dr. Owens.
Perfect. We will do that. And you can call me Sean, by the way.
Sean and Andrew. This is great.
So you mentioned something and you said, move the work forward. That is one thing maybe Dr. McCart, maybe you've heard, I haven't heard anyone say or use that as a component yet. What do you think, Dr. McCart?
Well, thank you, Dr. Owens. I appreciate that. And Dr. Amy, great to have you here. Dr. Amy, we'll go with that. I'll transition into the first name basis. But, the definition of leadership, you mentioned the leave it better than we found it. And we used to say that in scouting it's like the campground rule. You want to make it nicer than you found it. And I think if everyone did that, it kind of reminds me of Mark Victor Hansen, who did the Chicken Soup for the Soul books with Jack Canfield. He always said, each one reach one, each one teach one. Or Mother Teresa said, you can't feed 100 people to feed one person. And I think just moving it forward just a little bit, if everyone did that, it would, I think that sums up leadership, as Dr. Owens said. So along with that, we've had a few quotes already. We're known for that. And who do you think exemplifies your definition of leadership as the people that you've met through your career, the people you look up to? Who are some leaders that you think live that?
Yeah, I think that, I think our president, Neely Bendapudi, is an amazing leader. I have had the good fortune of working with many women leaders and many women mentors throughout my career. They have been so influential in my career and what I've been able to do. And that's really having those women leaders and mentors, I think, have enabled me to be successful and have given me the opportunity to learn and to grow and to really see how women can lead in a very effective way. One of the things that strikes me about President Bendapudi is that she is so open and welcoming and inclusive of everyone. And I think one of the things that I've tried to think about as I lead this college, because there's different perspectives and various viewpoints. And what I try to say is that I am willing to work with anyone that wants to support our college, anyone that wants to focus on what my vision is of student success, having programs and degrees that meet the workforce needs in the Louisville community and, high quality research. Anyone that wants to support my goals, I'm willing to work with them. So I think that her, and she is the same way with the university. And, we want to be inclusive. We want to work with others. We want to build those relationships because that's what's going to make us all better.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think that can often be overlooked, just that willingness of leaders to say yes. Let's say yes until there's something to say no to. How can we collaborate? How can we work together? And
yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I learned early on in my career when I was really trying to secure external funding as an assistant professor. Is one of my mentors said to me, "Try to say yes." Try to say yes. And then when people see that you're willing to say yes and go the extra mile and think about how can we collaborate to benefit others. That's worked very well for me. I'm very fortunate. That's worked very well for me in my career.
Well, before I give it back to Dr. Owens, I'll share one quote that's similar to that. As Zig Ziglar says, "No one ever built a statue to a critic." And I think it's just so easy to say no and to tear things down and to put up roadblocks. But from what I've seen, the ones that seem to really build things that are lasting are the ones that say yes and build relationships and develop collaborations. And
what I just think that specifically in education, whether it's higher education, whether it's elementary school, middle school, high school, there's so much work to be done that we can't possibly do it alone. And so that's the reason why I have an amazing team around me, that I wouldn't be effective if I didn't have that team around me, supporting me and really helping me lead and establish that vision and helping me communicate that vision to others within the college.
Well, I do want to ask about your team later on, but Dr. Owens, why don't I give it back to you for the next?
Yeah, so Amy, Dr. Amy, as we're going to still Dr. Bukarsik, Dr. Amy. So, Dr. Amy, this is probably going to be a very easy question for you because it's obviously very personal.
I like easy questions.
And so, you're sitting in the chair as the dean of the college. For those who are seeing us on YouTube, CEHD just stands for the College of Education and Human Development. You're sitting, you're there. I mean, you're at the top there. I'm not saying everyone's gunning for your chair, but you're at the top, right? As the dean of the College of Education and Human Development. But could you tell us about your leadership journey to the top?
Yeah. So, it's very unexpected, I think. So I'm a first generation college student. And as you said, I am a native Kentuckian. I was born in Winchester, Kentucky, which is east of Lexington. I grew up, both of my parents had graduated from high school, and it was really my mom who, from a very young age, really instilled in me the importance of education and the importance of being independent, right? And not having to rely on others to be really. So I always knew that I was going to go to college. Mm-hmm. And was fairly successful. I was successful in high school, had good grades. So I marched on to Transylvania University, which at the time, I was so shocked that I got in that I went, right? So private liberal arts school, had no idea. But what happened when I got there, I realized that while I was prepared academically for Transy, I was not prepared as a first generation student. Mm-hmm. And now looking back, I realized that when you are a first generation student, you do not have the social capital. You don't really know the ins and the outs of what college is, what the structure is, what strategies, because no one has been there to tell you. I mean, guidance counselors try to tell you in high school, but until you're like really there and experience it, you really don't know. And I remember my parents really struggling to find the money to send me to Transy. And I got there my first semester, and I'm sharing this just because I want people out there to know that you can fail and you can learn from that failure, and then you can still be successful. Right. So my first semester, I came home, I lived on campus. I came home, and my parents were especially my mom, she was so excited to see my grades, and I knew I had not done well my first semester. And at the time, in the 80s, they were mailing grades, and you would kind of watch in your mailbox as to when those grades got there. And I just remember that it was like the day before Christmas Eve, my first semester, and I go there, we open the envelope, 1.75. And then the academic probation letter came, and I just remember for the first time in my life, looking at my mother's face and just seeing sheer disappointment. Because if you think about it, I had an opportunity that she never had, right, of going to college. And she was just like, what are you doing? I did come back strong the next semester, 3.0 So I think that, but it was through that failure that I realized, coming and bouncing back, that I realized that I can do hard things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm resilient. I have some. I can do hard things. So anyway, so through I graduated from transient and decided that I wanted to be a teacher, which I probably should have been all along.
Mm-hmm.
But my parents were like, "You should do something that makes more money. Teaching doesn't really make any money. Teachers, you just don't want to be just a teacher."
Right.
Well, and so I got my teaching certificate and I got a job teaching students with disabilities, and I decided I was going to go into special education um, because I was really interested in how students learn and what are some things that we can do to help students, particularly students that struggled, how we can help them and teach them in better ways.
Mm-hmm.
So I got my teaching certificate. I got a job right out of the gate teaching middle school in Lexington, Kentucky. And at the time, the Kentucky Teacher Internship Program was in play. And my mentor from UK, who observed me a couple, 3, 4 times during that year, she said to me, "We have a grant for a master's degree. It will completely pay for your master's degree. Will you come to UK and get your master's degree?" And I said, "Sure. I love school. I always love school." So I went, I got my master's degree. And then during that time, they were able to bring me on full time as a graduate assistant. When I went to UK, my intention was still to go back and teach. My passion is teaching. I still teach a class here this semester. And so I stayed on, and then I ended up just staying on, getting my doctorate. And then I thought, I wanted to have an impact broader. I mean, the impact that I was able to have in my classroom was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But then I thought, well, what about a broader impact? So if I was teaching teachers, so I had 8 students in my class, but if I teach teachers to teach students with disabilities, and I have 20 of them, and then each of those teachers go out and they have on their own classroom. So my N of intervention just kept getting larger, right?
Right.
So I ended up, I was at Bellarmine for 2 years, and I've been here at the University of Louisville for 15 and a half years. I started as an assistant professor. I served as an associate dean for almost 5 years before being asked to serve as the interim dean. And I told someone the other day, they said, why do you like being a dean, or why do you want to be a dean? I said, it's the largest intervention I can find.
Great answer.
Great answer, right?
That's amazing. That is it. So some of it was intention, some of it was happenstance. I believe I think I heard Oprah Winfrey use it. She's like, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So you were prepared and opportunities just kept coming. And obviously
I kept saying yes.
Yes, you just kept saying yes.
Yes. Absolutely. I'm happy to help. Absolutely. I can do this. And so, I think maybe it was growing up on a farm, that work ethic. I enjoy work. I love to work. And so I think that is, so you're right. I think that when you work hard, you seek opportunity and you try to do the right thing. I think I'm very lucky. Again, I'm very fortunate. I feel very blessed to have had the opportunities that I've had.
Oh, no doubt. I Dr. McCart has a saying. I don't want to steal it, Dr. McCart. I know I'm going to mess it up. I think it's like, what is it? Show up and work. I don't know, man.
Well, yeah, it's a 3-step process for success, and that's well, I always say suit up and show up. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but it's go to work, stay at work, and work at work. But believe me, I mean, the opportunities will just follow you if you just.
And I think it helps when you do work that you're passionate about.
Right.
I mean, I am still just as passionate when I walk into a classroom or when I am able to talk to students about the benefits of higher education, because I think, look what higher education has done for me. Mm-hmm. Look what higher education has done for my family and for the future generations. I mean, it's amazing to me sometimes. And this, when I really sit and think and reflect about it, it's overwhelming.
Yes, that's amazing, Dr. McCart. What do you have to say about this? Because I know you're the one-liner guru around here, not me.
Well, I did see Charlie Munger, who's the co-founder in Berkshire Hathaway, as Warren Buffett said, if you want to succeed at something, get really interested in it. I just saw that yesterday, and I think that's sort of what Dean Lingo is talking about, being really interested, being curious, being excited and passionate about a topic. I think that'll go a long way. So, well, Dean Lingo, looking at your LinkedIn over here, you've got so many degrees that you have to push the button to expand that section because LinkedIn can't handle it.
I do love school. I mean, my grandfather always said to me, "Are you ever going to really finish?" I don't think so. I think I'll be one of those. Don't they give like free tuition to senior citizens? I'm going to be like in law school when I'm a senior citizen.
Well, I think that sounds great. Yeah, they do. It's free tuition after, I think, 65. So, yeah, I'll see you in class then.
You'll see me in class. That's right. That's right.
So that'll be great. Well, we wanted to ask you a little bit about your sort of your tribe. You mentioned earlier that the team that you have around you, and the leadership experts we study and listen to, they say it's great to have heroes, mentors, coaches, advisors, to have a tribe around you to help succeed. And so you sort of mentioned earlier the team and the individuals you have around you that help you. And I'm just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that in a way that our audience and we can learn from you, and how do you assemble such a good team?
Oh, my team is so amazing. So I intentionally have individuals that think differently than I do. So they're from different content expertise areas. They're from different, they come from different aspects than what I bring to the table. And when stepping into this interim dean role, I knew that would only make the team and the college stronger if I had diverse perspectives at the table. And so, like Dr. Jeff Sun, there is no one more innovative in the world than Dr. Jeff Sun. He's creative, he's flexible. And so he was just someone that I just said, I want him on my team. Dr. Meg Hancock is she's very student focused. She is very enthusiastic. She's very passionate about the work that she does. And Dr. Marian Hambrick is like the most thoughtful, analytical. I always say to him, he's kind of like the stealth bomber. Like he just flies under the radar, and then all of a sudden it's boom, think about this. And you're just like, why didn't I think about that? So so I've intentionally created a team that is diverse. So I have a Post-it note on my computer that says, in an imperfect state of the human mind, the interests of truth require diversity of opinions. And I completely believe that. So intentionally, I surround myself with individuals that will think differently and who will give me a more broad perspective about any issue that we face. So the team is critical. You can't do the work alone.
Right.
Well, and I think I love the way you describe that and getting that difference of opinion. I think it's easy for a lower level of leader would surround themselves with yes people, yes men or yes women that would agree with them, and let's
right. And sometimes like I'll say to them, like in a meeting, I'll say, okay, here's what I'm thinking. Argue with me and tell me why my thinking is wrong. So I encourage them to argue with me or have different perspectives than I do. And we do that a lot, but I really think that I make better decisions when that occurs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that says a lot about you as a leader, because we all like the good feedback. Feedback's nice, but the tough feedback's a little harder. But they say it's the breakfast of champions to ask for that feedback, and you don't grow if you don't.
Right. That's gonna be my one-liner from today, Andrew. Tough feedback is the breakfast of champions. Let me just tell you, I must be eating Wheaties every day.
Yeah, it's the most important meal of the day. So yeah, I'm glad you like that. That's good. And I'm going to ask you about feedback because you've written an article about that I found in my research. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But Dr. Owens and I have to share the questions, so I'll turn it over to him.
As we've always said, there is no sharing of questions. If we just have a good flow, we have a good chemistry, we rock back and forth. And we're going to transition a little bit away from a little bit of leadership and getting into learning. Obviously, everyone on this call is highly invested in the education realm and education world and educating adults, right? Educating people who want to get into the world and the realm of teaching other people. With it being Women's History Month, I have another great quote from Barbara Shear, who was a career counselor and author. She said, "You can learn new things at any time in your life if you're willing to be a beginner. Mm-hmm. If you actually learn to like being a beginner, the whole world opens to you." So with that being said, knowing that we're all beginners here, in your opinion, Dr. Amy, I sound so funny saying that. I laugh every time. In your opinion, how do you think learning has changed or is changing since you began your career in education?
Well, I mean, first of all, I mean, this kind of dates me. So the people are going to know, Sean, that I'm not 30.
But you're only, I mean, that's what I said. When you said that you said in the 80s, that means like you were like 3.
I wish. So I think one of the things obviously is technology. And I think we're seeing that now just in the past year than we have ever seen it before. Right. And I think that because students and teachers and, faculty here in higher ed, we have so much access to technology and the information that I think that's really changed, right? I mean, I'm a mom and I worry that my 12-year-old daughter does she really know how to add and subtract, or she can just say, "Hey Siri, what's 24 times 72?" And then it just comes. And I'm like, wait a minute. So I think that, that students just have so much more access to information and technology. And how do they, and that's good and bad, right? I mean, it's great because we can use technology as a tool, but technology can also be a distraction. It can consume us. It can give us false information. So now we're having to teach students what's truth and then what's not the truth, right? So having to go to that different level than previously that we had to do, especially 25 or 30 years ago.
You made a great point. I was taking a note. I was paying attention when you said we have to teach them what's truth versus what's not truth. I thought that was a great point because, like you said, I have kids and they do spend a lot of time on YouTube. I don't know if they ask Siri a lot of questions, but
maybe it's just not while you're around, Sean.
100%, 100%. I know it's happening, right? Because I've seen it happen, right? Because they'll be asking me like, "Dad, why are you doing this?" Just ask Siri, and it'll automatically populate. So I know it's happening. As you know what I'm saying? It's happening. It's just not always happening in my face. But and you kind of alluded to, your daughter and saying like, that's the pitfall for her of having an educator as a mom, because most moms would just be like, ask Siri. I don't know.
They do not like the fact that I'm an educator. I mean, they just, and sometimes they will just like, oh gosh, she's going to say something. And really, I've tried to be intentionally very I mean, I'm involved, but I would not say that I'm overly involved. I mean, I support my kids, but I'm not like super like in their teacher's face. If their teachers will have to agree if they listen to this, that I'm not like super over. I'm not over involved, but I do think, I can remember my son though, early, like 4 years old, and he goes, "Just search it up on your phone, like search it up." Search it up, right? I mean, some of them like, you all don't even know encyclopedia. You don't even know dictionary. The other thing this has done, I think, with technology is that it has, the good thing is, I think it's expanded kids' vocabulary because he loves podcasts and he knows a lot about so many different things, and it's whatever interests him, right? So he learns about soccer, athletes in England, and he knows places that previously we would have had to like look at an encyclopedia or whatever. And he knows so much more because the information can be gathered a lot more efficiently through multiple modes and means, documentaries, and so forth.
Yeah, that's a lot. So, Dr. McCart, we know that you're about to join the Parental Club. What do you have to say?
What do you have to say? Well, I'll add that my mom was a second grade teacher for 35, 40 years. So she didn't interfere, but there were very, very much things that the way I would write, the way I would speak, our grammar, sit up straight, don't eat like this, you've got to bend over at your waist. So
that's right. That's right.
Turned out to be good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love her. We still talk regularly, of course. So yeah, but well, this next question, and we want to ask things that you've learned during your career that women or anyone can learn from, things that you've adopted. But I want to, before I let you answer there, I want to say it can range from your background in farming. When you grew up, we talked a little bit yesterday. I put up tobacco for a season, and we talked about you did tobacco farming growing up. There's some articles that I want to reference and make sure we get these in here. But I think that these articles that you have published, or been widely published, by the way, for our audience in case they don't know, but things like giving opportunities for students to respond. I imagine that's good for the workplace. And that's one thing I think you do a great job as the dean, is allowing us to give feedback and then acting on feedback. So,
and feedback is a highly effective instructional practice, both ways, right? So teacher giving feedback to students, corrective feedback or specific feedback around their behavior or their academic performance. But it's also important that students give teachers also feedback, because that's when teachers can really learn what strategies are students bringing to the classroom that we can tap into and strengthen or build on to make their learning move to the next level. So, and this idea around feedback for continuous improvement is something that I have believed throughout my career, whether that is, as a teacher, as an assistant department chair, as an associate dean, and now as a dean, is we need accurate feedback about how we're doing, because it's only then that we're going to learn and do better. So and that requires open conversation, right? And developing a sense of safety and security that you are able to receive that. So I think that that's one of the key things that I've learned in this role, is that you can't take criticism personally. Right. Because if you did, you literally could not survive doing the job. I think I've learned to say, I'm sorry. At the time, I thought I was making the right decision, but for whatever reason, I realize now I didn't make the decision. But to go back and to apologize and then learn from that and move forward. So, those are just two. I've learned, being in this role, I have learned so much. And I don't think that any class or any coach, I did have an executive coach for a year. And she said to me, she goes, I don't think I've ever seen anyone that wants feedback the way that you do. Because again, I think it's only then that you can really reflect and think about how you're going to get better. People that don't accept feedback well, I don't think they're gonna go as far in leadership.
Well, and I think finding that balance of how to accept feedback. So we were talking to Coach Hawley recently, of the Racing Louisville's head coach, and Dr. Owens and I said we get our feedback on an anonymous evaluation a couple months later. If he makes a mistake, a stadium of people boo at him.
It's immediate feedback, right?
So somewhere in the middle is more
right. But that's the beauty of sports, right? Like constantly, you have that coach that's constantly throughout the game and throughout multiple times in practice can constantly give you feedback. How many times do we really take the time after a meeting to say, what went well in that meeting? What feedback do you have for me about how we could improve, and be more productive? So I think that's something that we could learn from athletics, is that immediacy of getting feedback.
Right.
Yeah, well, I think I like that, and I think it's I've heard it described as it's like harvesting. So we do in our project management, we do the lessons learned at the end of any project. It's like harvesting the things that we've learned, or else it's like that field of tobacco. If you don't bring it in the barn, then all the work was for naught if you didn't
That's
pay
right.
attention to what you learned from the process. So, well, Dr. Owens, please.
No, I mean, I think, and listen, I was sitting here taking notes. I felt like I was a student between Dr. Amy and Dr. Andrew discussing feedback. I love it. I was sitting here writing, taking a ton of notes, right? Dropping a lot of gold nuggets. Shout out to, I just want to give a shout out to all of my students, right? I just will be implementing this semester in all of my classes. Speaking of feedback, Dr. Amy, I will be putting 2 wikis in there.
Oh,
And
nice.
the whole point of adding the wikis at midterm and towards the end of the term is to say, hey, it's almost like in the military, we have what we call an AAR, an after action review, where you have to say, what are 3 things that are going good? What are 3 things that did not go well? And then what can we improve upon the next go around? And so I want to, ask all of my students, hey, what is going so good so far in this class? What is not going good in this class? And then, so all of my students who are in LEAD 311, 412, and 460, be ready to critique me before you actually critique me.
Right. Well, and I think it's also important for leaders to know that you can't respond to every piece of criticism. Right. So you might get feedback. One person might love what you're doing. The other person might hate what you're doing. And so you have to kind of find that balance, because, I said that if I responded to every piece of criticism, I would feel like I was playing whack-a-mole all the time.
Right.
Like, oh, that popped up. Oh, I made that, and so that's exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
So, you really have to think about and reflect, this is what suits my style. Mm-hmm. This is what I think is good for the organization. And then this is how we can, and this is what will benefit the organization.
That's good. That's good. And it kind of ties into the question I want to ask next. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of says this, we are in technology, obviously we are in an assessment driven world at this point in time. Everything has to have an analytic or a story behind it or whatever the case may be. What are some good data points that you use that kind of can advance or that you think can advance, either whether it be the university or even the college most specifically?
The university has invested in recent years in, many systems that provide us with a lot of good information, a lot of good data. Mm-hmm. I think one of the most important things, I think a lot of times we can be data rich and decision poor. Gotcha. So, we can have all this data, but what are we doing with it? Mm-hmm. So, I have asked, the advising team to think about what are some questions that we really want to know the answers to. Like it might be, how are first generation students performing in their second semester classes their first year, right? Mm-hmm. So if we know that they tend to, or if data tell us that they tend to not do as well in their second year, then I'm encouraging my advising staff to how can we be proactive? So if we know this group of students is likely to have difficulty in these courses this semester, then what can we put in place up front to support them so that they are, or is it maybe we need to do some teaching strategies or test taking strategies, or is it the schedule of classes, right? Mm-hmm. Are we being student centered or are we being faculty centered? Right. So in terms of student centered, it's really hard if you're working for UPS to take 8 a.m. classes. Right. So do we have the ability to say, okay, you work at UPS, you're a Metroversity student. So we know that this group of Metro or UPS students need to take this section of class at 1:00 so that they can take classes and then go work. Those are the kind of the proactive supports that we can put in place if we're looking at data. So I encourage us to look at data that really will focus on what our students need to be successful. We just got some retention numbers last week. And Dr. Hancock was telling me our retention is better this year than it was last year from year 1 to year 2. Mm-hmm. And then, previously we had looked at, are there certain programs that typically don't have good retention. So really thinking about what we can do to put good quality student supports in place. One of the things we've done is that in terms of first year students, first year full-time students, they take an academic orientation class. We put faculty in place to teach those courses because it makes sense to me that faculty be in front of our first year students, that they have a definite connection with someone that they can connect with, someone that's going to be in their intended major. Yeah, some of them will switch majors, but I wanted them to be in a space where they had a faculty member that knew the resources to the university that they could connect with. So I made the department chairs in the teaching and learning departments teaching those courses, because again, that perspective is so important for faculty. And I think when faculty teach, when department chairs teach, I'm teaching, you always have that student perspective at the forefront. So every decision that I make, every meeting that I'm in, I always think that first year student, what is this going to be like for them? And now I'm teaching in the Louisville Teacher Residency Program. And I think, what is their experience in terms of they didn't sign up to teach completely in a virtual manner for Jefferson County Public Schools, yet they are. So what is it that I can do to support them?
That's interesting. By the way, we want to give a shout out to our third podcast guest, Dr. Marty Polio.
Oh,
He's
great.
Superintendent.
Good.
He was our third guest in January. But yeah, he actually talked about the Louisville Teacher Residency Program during that podcast. So for all our listeners out there, if you want to figure out about it, if you're in the area, go ahead and listen to that podcast with Dr. Polio. You can get some great information about.
And you'll have me as an instructor.
And there you go. You have Dr. Amy.
Yes. I teach the class on Friday morning, so I don't have it tomorrow morning because it is spring break, like you all mentioned earlier. But again, it's a how to teach reading course, and so again, the fact that I can have that experience in front of students is just so important and meaningful to me.
That's amazing. Dr. McCart, I don't want to steal all the oxygen out of the room to steal your term.
Well, I like to have and now back to me. That's my favorite part. So I told Dr. Owens I'm not much, but I'm all I think about. So anyway, I want to comment on a few things. You said so many things there, Dean Lingo, that I want to comment on. And, we study the Toyota way in leadership, and they say that to understand the work, you have to go to what they call the Gemba, which is where the work happens. And the problem they try to prevent is a lot of executives get a corner office down the hall and away from where the work actually happens. But you're in the classroom, you're there, you're in touch. So it's good to know when actual leaders we get to talk to are doing the things we talk about. So, but the question I want to ask you about, and it's really about how COVID has changed things. And I want to tell a quick story about you, and you may or may not remember this, but when this was maybe February or early March last year, and you and I got to walk across campus, and you were asking me about COVID, and you said, well, you've got a public health background, Andrew, what do you think? And I didn't know what to think yet, but and nobody was really sure. The lockdowns hadn't happened yet. And I will say, though, one thing that you said in our meetings, you said, well, I have to get Ryan and Meg and all those students back. And you were so outward focused on those other people. I mean, that made me a fan of yours right away, because it was just thinking about how to get those students back. It was the last flight out of Ecuador, if I'm not.
Right. So we had a group of students, and Meg and Ryan and Ginevra Corte, they were in Ecuador during spring break of last year, when our country, the shutdown was happening. And I was just so worried about them. They were over there. When were they going to get back? So luckily they all came back. They were all safe. But that was a very scary time. And I think, in thinking about the last year, specifically, you know, right when last March, when everything was starting to kind of unravel, the not getting information, then getting information, then getting information, and the information was changing, and thinking you were going to say this, but then you realize that that was going to be inaccurate. And just, I mean, it I don't think there would be anything that could teach me more, right? I mean, what a opportunity to lead during a horrific time and an unprecedented time, but a time where I really saw it as an opportunity to learn. I saw it as an opportunity to lean on others to help me, to help us all get through this, but while maintaining calmness and strength, and wanting to make sure that we were reasonable. We kept people as safe as we could, trying to not escalate when it wasn't. But as you all know, one of the most horrific things was when one of our colleagues passed away from the virus just a couple of weeks ago, and that was difficult. It was difficult for my team. It was difficult for all of us, and especially when, you know, his family, his wife was in the hospital when he passed away, and they weren't ready to release the information or to make that public yet. And so that was very challenging. Since then, you all probably received the email, or you all received the email that I sent. And so, you know, what a horrific, just sad, traumatic event the past year has been for all of us, for many reasons. So I think we do have to look for the light. We have to look for the areas in which that offer us hope, and that in areas in which we can move forward.
Yeah, those are a lot of great points there. And you mentioned on that walk across campus when we were talking about it, you said, you know, as a leader, I really like when things are a little more predictable, when things are a little more stable. And you wouldn't know, I wouldn't have known it if you hadn't told me that. With all the things changing, the information changing, the messaging changing, I think the communication has really stepped up, and you've done a great job in that area, even though it wasn't your preferred style or your preferred environment to be a leader in. So just to give you a compliment there. I said this was going to be a fan piece interview, that we're big fans.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you. And I think that, you know, that's also, I've had to learn to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. Right. I mean, even with the racial unrest and the racial injustices that have existed for a really long, you know, hundreds of years, but have come to light, especially since, Breonna Taylor was murdered. I mean, getting comfortable, being uncomfortable, and being able to have a space for people to discuss and to learn and unlearn, that has, again, I have grown so much. And for that, this past year has taught me so much. And so I wouldn't change that for the world, because I do think I'm a better leader now than I was last March 4th.
That's good.
Well, I think that's it goes back to the very beginning when we say better than we found it, right? To be okay, Shawshank Redemption, they say get busy living or get busy dying, but it's that idea of growth and constantly moving in a good direction. So, well, Dr. Owens, please take it away here before I.
Well, you know, yeah, I think that I have given Dr. Amy. For those that don't know, I was hired at the university at the end of September. And there was they asked me at the end, it was Dr. Amy and Dr. Hambrick on the interview. And the one question that I asked that I thought was, as she said, I hadn't thought of it. And so I have added it to the interview questions that all of our participants have asked. And I just want to ask you, what positives, I mean, we heard the great story, but what positives has COVID-19 taught us concerning, you know, we can say education, we can say life, we can say leadership, you can put anything in there, but what are the positives that COVID-19 has taught us or taught you?
Right. I think number one, flexibility. I mean, I think it's taught us all to be flexible, right? I mean, that we can do things in different ways that we had never done before. And I think that it's taught us more about technology and what that looks like. But I also think that it's taught, especially this younger generation, and I'm talking about as a mom, it has taught my children to be resilient. I mean, last spring, they had to flip into completely online school. They had to be separated from their friends. They had to practice soccer in different ways. They had to do so that resilience. Now they have the opportunity to look back on and say, we can do hard things.
Mm-hmm.
We can get through. Yeah, if something's canceled, it's no big deal. Things have been canceled on us before. So I think it's taught us, it's taught us definitely resilience. I think it's taught us patience and adaptability and flexibility. I think that it's also taught us that we have to lean on each other and the importance of the community that we have. One of the things that I miss the most because of COVID are the interactions that I'm able to have with my colleagues and with my students. And so that I miss that. And I am looking forward to the day when our building is bustling and when I can look out my window and I can see students, because in case you all don't know, I get my energy from people. and so I do miss those interactions.
That's good. That's good. I like that. I liked everything you listed there. Flexible, adaptable, resiliency, the community. I've noticed that you have said this several times throughout this interview. We can do hard things. Is that like your personal affirmation, mantra?
Yeah, I do. I think that it's only through, we can do really hard things. And once you do something hard, then the next thing you can say, I did something hard, so I can do something hard again. So one of the things that my team, Marion and Meg are runners. And so I told this story in front of the college one time, is when I became the interim dean. Obviously, we all need some form of self-care. And so mine was walking in the morning. And so Marion and Meg just happened to say to me, well, you're putting in the time for walking. Why don't you run? And I was like, run? Really? And they were like, I said, but I've never done anything athletic in my entire life. And they said, oh, you can do it. So, of course, I start training for this mini marathon. I do the mini marathon. And I thought one or two things will happen after that mini marathon. Either I will say, that was nice. I don't need to do another one. Or, I really liked that. So you all can probably guess which one I decided to do. So I've done like 3 since then, right?
Wow.
I mean, they've had to be virtual, but I think though that it's a way in which you can. I run in the mornings or I bike in the mornings, but I think it's a way in which I feel that it's my time alone. It's my self-care, but it's also I feel like I've accomplished something, right? And so I think doing hard things is important for self-confidence. I think it's an important model for my children to see that I take risks, that I work hard, and opportunities can come when those things happen.
That's amazing. Dr. McCart, you want to chime in on this?
Well, I thought you'd never ask, Dr. Owens. Thank you. Well, I'm glad you mentioned the story, Dean Lingo, about the running, because I remember that story and I wanted to ask you about this. And you wrote an article about shared story reading, teaching mathematics to students with moderate and severe disabilities, and the power of using literature to create a context for problem solving. And you've told stories about the running. You told a story, I believe, about I don't know if it was a 5-iron or a 9-iron, but
yeah. If I said so I try, and I think that's. I think it's important. I think stories help people to connect, and it's very important that I connect with others. And so I think through storied reading, or in that case, it was setting a context so that children could see how a math problem is in a real world story. Right. And so, you try to set the context so that students can, we call it in special education, generalize from one setting in which we're teaching to a real world setting. And so I think that's the same. I mean, to me, I think connecting with people is telling those stories, and hopefully somebody will remember something about it.
Well, for sure. And I think it's a great technique. And really, that's how knowledge, I think, transferred over the millennia through the spoken word and stories. And I still think it's a great teaching technique, and in addition to helping people relate. So we'll go to the next question I wanted to ask and be sure we get to, but why should women choose or still choose to go into education in 2021? So Women's History Month, I know you've...
Yeah, I think that, teaching and education is still the most important profession, in my opinion, in the entire world. I mean, what other profession touches all other professions, right? And so I also think that so many times women get channeled into education because it's typical, right? I mean, one of my heroes is Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and she said, I thought I was going to be a kindergarten teacher, or that was like one of her early things was I was going to be a kindergarten teacher. And I think that so many times society has kind of said that being a teacher is an appropriate career for a woman. And it's beyond that, right? I mean, it's beyond, because it also, teaching and education, it also leads you to other pathways and other career opportunities. And so I think that it's still a great profession. You learn something every single day, whether you are, a teacher in the K-12 system, where you're a teacher in higher education, whether you're teaching airplane pilots and doing professional learning with UPS, you're always learning, and you're always able to make that connection with students. And it kind of goes back to, you're making them better than when you found them, or you're imparting knowledge on them that they didn't have previously. So it's amazing.
That's a great answer, by the way.
It is a great answer. Yeah, that's... I don't have anything to add to that. So, Dr. Owens, in the interest of time, I know I always accuse you of being the fun one, and we'll let you take over the fun section as well as maybe the rapid fire before that. But why don't I hand it over to you as we start to wind things down here? Although I feel like we could talk.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. I will. Let me get this off the screen. So, Dr. Amy.
Yes.
We have what we have implemented around these parts on the CardinOLL podcast, what we call rapid fire. Rapid fire are some fun questions where we can gain a little bit of insight, but we want you to answer with the first thing that comes to mind.
I'm ready.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
I'm ready. I have my hand on the buzzer.
Okay, get your hand on the buzzer. Here we go. First question, rapid fire, round one.
Okay, great.
If you could pick one word to describe your life so far, what would it be and why?
Privileged.
Ooh, nice. Why?
Well, because, I'm a white female that had parental support to go and seek education. And I've just been privileged to be mentored by some great women. I've been privileged to lead this college, and I recognize that.
Okay. Next question, round two. You passed. What are 3 non-negotiable characteristics that anyone on your team or tribe has to have?
They have to be positive, they have to be hardworking, and they have to be honest.
Ooh, I love them. Okay, You advance. Round 3. Here we go. What is your favorite dessert?
Dr. Pentecost lemon bars. If you haven't had them, you should try them. I'm telling you, she could sell them. They're Dr. Hambrick's favorite as well.
I'm going to add that to the list.
Good
thing this is recorded. Okay, round 4. If you weren't in higher education, what would you be doing?
Oh, that's a good one. A lawyer, or a politician,
Oh, you're too positive to be a politician. I'm sorry.
Am I?
You're too happy. It's probably not going to work.
Right. That probably wouldn't work.
Okay. Round 5. Last question. Here we go. Rapid fire. If you could sit with your 13-year-old self, what would you tell her?
Be patient. Everything is going to be okay. Just don't rush. Enjoy life every moment.
You've successfully defended
Thanks.
rapid fire.
That's amazing.
But you're not off the hook yet. Because once we do rapid fire, we have one question that we always want to ask our guests. It is what we call our fun question. It is how we will end the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dr. Amy, if your life was the title of a book, made up or real, what would it be and why?
Maybe from farm girl to dean?
Ooh,
I don't know.
buy it. I buy it. I buy it.
Yeah,
from farm
maybe.
girl to dean.
Yeah.
That is an amazing interview with Dr.
Oh,
Amy.
this was so much fun. If you ever need me to come back, I'm happy to do so because this was definitely the favorite part of my day.
We will definitely have our boss back on the podcast.
Thank you all so much. This is a great idea, and I had so much fun. I really appreciate it.
We had a lot of fun having you on here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Keep doing a great job. You're leading. You're doing great things. There's a lot of gold nuggets I know our viewers and listeners took from this interview.
Great. And thank you.
No problem. Dr. McCart, what say ye?
Oh gosh, well, Dr. Owens, that was. I'm really enjoying this Women's History Month as we're expecting a daughter. Our first child is going to be a daughter, and it's really inspiring to me to talk with so many just strong, successful women who are leaders in our community. It just means more to me getting ready to have a daughter here. So I don't want to get in my feelings too much here. We've got to stay professional and run the show, but it was just great. It was inspiring from leave it better than you found it to, she was first generation college student, but she made up for lost time with all those degrees she picked up in Lexington. So I just enjoyed that. I could go down my list here, but I've got a whole page of notes that I took that I'm going to practice and try to put into my habits. So what about you? What are some things you?
Listen, I took away her mantra. We can do hard things, or I can do hard things, or you can do hard things. You can kind of replace that pronoun in the front however you want. But I think we can do hard things. I think it's never about, I've heard it say many a times when someone says no, it stands for next opportunity. So it's the ability to just say, hey, it's hard. Someone told you no, you didn't get the job, you didn't get this, you didn't get that. The list goes on and on. It's hard to find a job, or you're not doing well in the class right now. But guess what? You can do hard things, because once you do one hard thing, it's like a domino effect. If you do one hard thing, another thing will happen, and another thing will happen, and another thing will happen, and the next thing you know, you can really look back. Our students, right? These are they're sometimes coming to this program because the first go around didn't work out, right? It didn't work out. It didn't go in their favor, and they took some time away, and they went and got a career, and they went and got a family, and they went and got a profession, and that was really hard. And now they're in school, and this COVID, and the list goes on and on. But the reality is, I would tell them that, hey, guess what? You can do hard things. That would be my takeaway.
Yeah, I think that's a great takeaway. And I think another one I was surprised to hear the list of, not really surprised because I know Dean Lingo's leadership style, but listing the things that non-negotiables people on our team have to have, and that being positive, I think was the first one she mentioned, or at least in the top 3. And that was, I go back to the book Think and Grow Rich, or Andrew Carnegie was the steel magnate, the titan of industry. And he said that one of the things that he wants people, if someone is agreeable and collaborative, and positive is another way of saying that they can go much farther than almost any other attribute. Obviously, the hardworking and the honesty is great too, but that positive attitude of looking for ways to work together. And that was a hallmark of Dean Lingo's strategy that she mentioned here. So I think anyone could take this interview and run with it.
It will go down in our Hall of Fame as definitely one of the best. Well, guess what, podcast listeners and viewers? Thank you for joining us today. You can check us out in all of our pods at uofl.me/leadership-pod. Again, you can check all of our previous podcasts, including this one, at uofl.me/leadership-pods. So we hope that you enjoyed today. We hope that you enjoyed this classroom. We hope that one day, once this COVID-19 kind of gets past us and gets over us, that you can either join the College of Education and Human Development at the University of Louisville, either virtually or on campus, to get a degree that gets you ahead. We have bachelor's degrees online, master's degrees online, as well as online certificates and leadership programs in a wide range of programs that cover various industries, all the way from healthcare to education and human resources. You can check all of those out at uofl.me/podcast-OLL. Again, check out all of our online degrees, bachelor's, master's, and certificate programs at uofl.me/podcast-OLL. So, as we say around here, you can count the number of seeds in an apple, but you can never count the number of apples in the seeds. When you teach, you never know how many lives you will influence. And it is clear that Dr. Amy is influencing a lot of lives, as well as her team and faculty and staff. Cardinal Nation, keep leading, keep learning, keep influencing, and we hope to see you soon. You can check us out in the meantime on YouTube, on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and share all of our information so you know what's going on with the podcast, as well as what's going on with the college, as well as when you want to hear Dr. McCart talk about his leadership minutes and myself talking about the learning minutes. So until then, take care and stay safe.